discuss about judicial activism. It is again for first semester major students, and your exam is also knocking at the door. So very briefly I am saying about judicial activism. To me it seems to be a little bit tough topic, and that's why. So what is judicial activism? Judicial activism means when the judiciary started playing proactive role, more active role, then it can be termed as judicial activism. That means the judiciary is being very active. So that is judicial activism. And we can see that when the judges have their personal opinion about public policy. Public policy means government policy. So who is responsible for framing public policy? It is the executive and the judiciary. So executive and the legislature, executive and the legislature. But when the judges or the members of the judiciary started giving their opinion on the activities or the policies framing by the executive and the legislature, then it can be termed as judicial activism. It is not their area, but in spite of that, they are giving their own opinion on the activities of the legislature and the executive. So it is judicial activism. J.S. Verma, eminent judge, he gave a definition of judicial activism: the active process of implementation of rule of law essential for the preservation of functional democracy. So who are responsible for making the democratic system successful? It is the executive and legislature, and they are also responsible for implementing the principle of rule of law. So when the judges, they take the active process, they take the active part for the protection of democratic setup, for protection of democratic tradition, for implementation of the principle of rule of law, which are actually the duties and responsibilities of the executive and legislature, then it can be termed as judicial activism. That means it is extending to judicial arms. Thus, the Supreme Court, and because extending to judicial arm means what happened? Actually, the judiciary, they have started playing this active role because of the fact that people were and are sometimes dissatisfied with the activities of the government, with the policies and programs of legislature and executive, and they look after the judges. The judges will try to help us, and that is why judiciary came into forefront, and they started interfering in the executive and the legislature. Thus the Supreme Court deals with matters like they have deals with many cases. If I read out the name of those cases, some of the cases, you will find that these are the cases which can be settled by the, not cases, issues which can be settled by the executive and the legislature. But as the executive and the legislature, they do not perform their duty properly, that's why judges came into forefront. So for example, implementation of universal civil code throughout India. Universal civil code means same code for all religious community and for all in India. This is the responsibility of the executive, but as the executive is not successful, the judiciary also give their opinion. Then river pollution, they give the instruction to the government to keep the river free from pollution. That is also the responsibility of the executive. But as the executive are unable to do that, that's why, on the interest of the public, judiciary give them the instruction to keep the river pollution free. Then preservations of monuments which are of historical importance. Those monuments are, it is again they are in the directive principle of state policy to keep the historical monuments intact and preserve them. So it is the responsibility of the executive. But here again executive is not showing their eagerness, and that is why judiciary again give them the instruction, please preserve the monuments. Then ecology and ecological issues are there, environmental issues are there. So for all these issues, these are actually recent origin. These are new development that took place in our country or in other countries also, for which executive should have to mobilize itself properly. But as the executive and the legislature are lagging behind, so for the welfare of the people, it is the judiciary, they are started giving instruction to the legislature and the executive. Even the cases of corruption of politicians and bureaucrats, which can be solved by the administrative court even, but here also the cases are coming to the Supreme Court. People are submitting petition to the court regarding the case of corruption of politicians and bureaucrats, and here also the judiciary is playing a very proactive role. So what happened, we found that it is the negligence of the executive and legislature which give the opportunity to the judiciary to play an active part to safeguard the welfare of to safeguard the interest of the people. And already I told you that people's faith on judiciary for implementing socio-economic objectives. That means number of cases are nowadays evolving, and that is known as PIL. Public interest litigation case. That means the people, one person or a group of person, they may apply to the government, they may apply to the judiciary to protect some issues of public interest. These are known as public interest cases, public interest litigation cases. Why these cases are increasing day by day, why this type of cases are coming to the Supreme Court and High Court, or why the Supreme Court and High Court give importance to PIL? Because people's faith on judiciary, people already have lost faith on executive and legislature, and that's why through the PIL they try to attract the attention of the court, and that's why court is playing a very proactive role, and they are giving decisions on many matters which otherwise can be solved by the executive and the legislature. So this concept of PIL, or the emergence of PIL or public interest litigation case, is very much responsible for the development of the concept of judicial activism. Then two important cases are there. One case is Goloknath versus Punjab government. In this particular case, actually, by giving judgment to this particular case, actually Supreme Court increases its power. That in constitutional cases they increase their rule. That means in constitutional cases Supreme Court increase its power. And they also said that if necessary they will put instruction to the executive and the legislature to debar from some certain activities which are detrimental for the people. So they will give instruction, they will put obstruction on the activities of the government and the activities of the legislature and executive which are detrimental for the people. And along with that, from time to time, they may also give instruction to the government to do these things, to do that thing for the welfare of the people. So Goloknath versus Punjab government, that particular case actually helped to enlarge the rule of the Supreme Court. And another case, that one is Keshavananda Bharati case. This is another most important case. And while giving judgment to this particular case, the judges said that basic structure of the constitution cannot be changed by the parliament, cannot be changed by the legislature or the executive. So through these case also, they have defined already which are the basic structure of the constitution. So through these two cases, judiciary themselves have increased their power to a great extent, and nowadays judicial activism is a very important concept and debatable question in Indian political system. So some of the merits of this judicial activism, first one is that through the judicial activism, the Supreme Court or the courts can control the selfish interest of the party government. That means who form the government? Political parties. And they always try to implement their own agenda while they are in the government. So if the political parties which are in power, they are working to fulfill only their self-interest, then through the judicial activism, court can put restriction on their government. Then to give objection on the laws passed by the legislature which are detrimental for the people. Sometimes the legislature pass certain laws which are not only unconstitutional but which are also useless or detrimental for the welfare of the people. So through this judicial activism and the power of judicial review, the court can at least check the intention of the government. Then to control the proactive rule of the executive. That means nowadays, at present, the states are regarded as welfare states and their activities are increasing day by day. So, as the states are doing many things, they are interfering in each and every aspects of the rule. The state became very much proactive. Sometimes state means the executive. Sometimes, as they have majority support in the legislature, so sometimes the executive started behaving like a dictator. So, to control the proactive and dictatorial tendency of the executive, this judiciary can impose control on them. So, this is another merit. To help the people to solve their socio-economic problem. That means people are facing various types of socio-economic problem. New issues are coming nowadays. So, if the executive and the legislature, they are not in a position to satisfy the desire of the people, then to solve their grievances, people look after the judiciary, and judiciary through their power of proactive rule, they may sometimes instruct and bound the government to do something for the betterment of the people. And next one is constitution is a living document. Constitution is not a static one. It must be changing according to the changing circumstances. So if the judiciary remain inactive, then constitution will remain static. But to make it a real living document, the power of judicial review and judicial activism is very necessary, so that new laws will be included in the constitution and constitution will become a real machinery for the welfare of the people. Then another thing is that people's ignorance. What happened? Those which are underdeveloped countries, there the people may not be so much literate, they may be ignorant, they may not be so much politically conscious. So in that case, they are unaware of what is their right, what is their duties, what is their responsibilities. In that case, through the PIL, if some educated people take the initiative and approach the court, then at least the judiciary can give those people who are unaware of their rights and freedom, to give certain freedom to them. So these are some merits. And so far as demerits are concerned, first one is people will lose confidence on the constitution. Why? If the judiciary interpret the constitution every now and then, constitution will lose its own sanctity. People will lose its belief on the constitution, because constitution is the basic law of the land. But if it is changing every now and then as per the instruction of the judiciary, people may lose its confidence on the constitution. Then conservativeness. Sometimes the judges, there are few persons who are sitting on the Supreme Court or High Court as judges. So if those few people, they may not be so much, some of them may not be so much modern in their outlook, and if they are conservative in nature, then what happens? Their restriction, their decisions may put hindrances on the process of the government, and the state may become standstill, and it will unable to make progress whatever is needed for the country. If the judges are conservative, if their decisions are conservative, if it is not lively, in that case country may suffer. Then impartiality. That means always the judge may not be impartial even. Because they are also human beings. So if they are partial, if the partiality is there among the judges, and while delivering justice, while delivering decisions, they remain as partial, in that case also certain class of people may suffer. Then obstruction on political activities. Political activities actually need a free flow. So, if there is obstruction from judiciary every now and then the political process of the country may face problem. Because executive, in a parliamentary form of government, executive is responsible for the administration of the state. So political activity should be going on without any hindrances. But because of judicial activism, sometimes some obstruction may be created, and the free flow of political activities may face the problem. And it is not acceptable for democracy also. Some of the people are saying that it is not acceptable for democracy, well, because democracy is people's government, and here the people, they themselves have elected their own representative. They have their faith on their representatives. So if the Supreme Court every now and then interfere on the activities of their representatives, then how can it be termed as democratic government? So the main characteristics of democracy, that is to respect the voice of the people, or the people are the source of all power, they may come into contradiction if the judicial activism is very powerful in a country. So whatever may be the fact, we have discussed about the merits and demerits of judicial activism, but one thing is certain, that judiciary become active only because of the fact that executive and legislature at one time were not performing their duty properly, and it is the people who willingly confer that right to the judiciary to help them in their distress. If the executive and legislature play their role properly, if they work for the benefit of the people, if they forget their party interest and look after the national interest, and if they fulfill the desire of the people, then hopefully judicial activism, or the concept of judicial activism, will become much more not much more proactive like today's world. So thank you.